boys and girls, you guys now know that Mrs. Trebleclef, the beautiful princess, got married to Mr. Bassclef, the beautiful and handsome prince. They were married for a long time, and they decided that they wanted to add to their family. And so, today, you guys get to meet the wonderful Trebleclef family kids. The oldest son is 4 years old. His name is Hole. He loved donut holes. I mean, he would roll to the store that's 4 blocks away, and he would get 4 donut holes, and they were the most delicious, wonderfully made donut holes. He would get chocolate, he would get sprinkles, he would get raspberry filling, and he would get a strawberry donut. And he would roll back home and he'd just eat them and eat them and eat them, and he would love it. And so he loved donut holes because he looks just like a donut hole. He looks like a hole in the ground. And he is 4 years old. So for him, you would count to 4. You would go, ta. It's almost like you were counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you guys try that with me? Here we go. Ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now do it on ta. Ready, and ta. Well, after Hole would eat all of those donuts, he'd get so tired. And he would just be like, oh, I better go take a rest. I'm so full. And so he would roll into his hole. And it literally looked like a hole in the ground. He would roll along and bloop. He would make sure the lights were nice and shut off. And he would sleep sound and snug as a bug in a rug. That is Hole. He's the oldest of the family. Well, Mrs. Trebleclef wanted to have a little baby girl, but unfortunately, she didn't do that yet. The next note is Half Note. He loved to play hockey. Everywhere he would go, he would carry his stick with him, and he would skate around and he'd count 1, 2, 1, 2. And the reason he counted 1, 2 was because he was 2 years old. Everyone try and play with me for Half Note. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2. Or we could do it on ta. Ready, and ta, ta. So Half Note would run around and he would play hockey and play and play and play and play. And then he'd be like, oh, I am so tired. And so I gotta take a rest. And he would make sure to lay his hockey stick at the bottom of his bed, and he would crawl into bed, and he would sleep for a long time. And so this is Half Note. So we have Whole Note, who's 4, and Half Note, who's 2. The next boy that Mrs. Trebleclef and Mr. Bassclef had was Quarter Note. Now, the sad thing about Quarter is that he was a little naughty. He would take his brother Half's hockey stick. He would also take mud and smear it all over his face. He would even, if he was eating chocolate cake, would take frosting and smear it all over his face. And Mrs. Trebleclef would say, Quarter, you need to go and wash that off. And he'd say, no, I'm not going to. And so Mrs. Trebleclef and Mr. Bassclef would say, Quarter, you need to go and take a rest. And so he would stomp down the hallway, and he would go into his bed, and he would crawl into his rest sleeping bag, and it would always be mangled all about because he would kick and scream and say, I don't want to take a rest. But if you were to try and make a rest, it would be a Z and then a C. It would be as ZC as that. Now, Quarter, he would be just 1 year old. He was only 1 year old. So for Quarter, I would say ta or 1. Can you guys try that with me? Ready, and ta. Now, to quick review, we have Whole Note, who's 4 years old. He would go ta, 4 beats. Half Note is 2, so he would go ta for 2 beats, and quarter note is 1. So he would just go ta, just for 1 beat. Well, they decided to have a couple more kids, and the next ones were the cutest little boys around. They happened to be twins, and they had this one piece of hair that would just stick straight out no matter what. And so Mrs. Treble-Clef would say, oh, look at my little baby 8th notes. They have one little piece of hair that sticks out. And so she would try and take her spit and wipe down the hair, but then it would go bloop. It would just pop right back up. And so Mrs. Treble-Clef and Mr. Bass-Clef were like, well, we're just going to leave these 2 little boys with their one little alfalfa hair sticking out. Well, Quarter, he was a kind of a naughty note, and so he would look at his brothers and he'd be like, I see that one piece of hair is sticking out from each of them. I am going to tie them together. And so he would tie them together, and they would look like this. He'd take their 2 pieces of hair and he would tie them together. And we know that in music as T-T. And so when they're together, they actually didn't mind because they were the best of friends. But when they would sleep, Mrs. Treble-Clef would take their hair and she'd say, oh, we need to lay you guys in your cribs. So she would carefully untangle the hair, and they would go to sleep right in their cribs side by side. But that one piece of hair, no matter what, would stick straight out. And so for them, we would just go like this. We would say, T-T. Try it with me. Ready, and T-T. One more time. Ready, and T-T. Well, Mrs. Treble-Clef and Mr. Bass-Clef had a dream. They would say, we just want little baby girls so bad. Well, guess what? The next one they had, they didn't have 1 little girl. They didn't have 2 little girls. They did not even have 3 little girls. They had 4 little girls. They were called quadruplets, and they were the cutest little babies around. There was 4 of them, and they each came with beautiful, beautiful hair. And Mrs. Treble-Clef would look at them, and she'd say, oh, my little girls are the cutest little girls ever. And she would take their hair and she would braid it into the beautiful, beautiful pigtail braids. And so each one had 2 little braids, and that's how you can tell 16th notes apart from 8th notes. 8th notes, the little boys only had 1 little piece of hair that stuck straight out like alfalfa hair, whereas the little girls, the little 16th notes, would have 2 pieces of hair that stuck out, and she would braid them into beautiful pigtail braids. Well, guess what? Quarter, oh, he's so naughty. He would look at his little baby sisters and he would say, I'm gonna tie their hair together. And so he would. He would tie all 4 of their little braids together, and they would look like this. It is called a set of 16th notes, and we would go tika tika. It'd be super fast, tika tika. But guess what? The little girls, they didn't mind being tied together because they were the best of friends and they loved it. And so everyone try tika tika with me. Ready, and tika tika. All right? And so for them, they were just 3 months old. They were just a little baby. When they would go to sleep, Mrs. Treble-Clef would carefully take apart their beautiful hair, and she would put them into their cribs next to each other and make sure that they each had their 2 little pigtail braids sticking straight out. And so if you look at this family here, we have Mrs. Treble-Clef, Mr. Bass-Clef, whole note, who's 4, half note, who's 2, quarter note, who's 1, a pair of 8th note twins who are 6 months old, and 4 quadruplet 16th notes who are 3 months old. And so you see that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids in their family. Wowza, that is awesome. So let's do a little recap. Whole note up here is 4, and when he goes and takes a rest, he sleeps in a hole in the ground. So you notice that the hole is on the bottom side. And you have to color it in so nice and carefully. All right, so to recap, we have Hole, who's 4, who sleeps in an upside down hat. Half, who's 2, sleeps in a regular hat. Quarter, who is 1, sleeps in a breast that's curled up like a sleeping bag. Eighth note sleeps with 1 piece of hair sticking out. And 16th note sleeps with 2 little braids sticking out. Well, your teacher is going to ask you to draw all of these, and I want you to use your best drawing. So make sure that you're careful when you color in notes and you make it as neat as possible. Have fun.